Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Juhi Palat. She is the Director of Sales Operations at Velo 3D. She resides in Los Angeles, California, and we are super grateful to welcome you today. How are you?
Really good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. We ask everyone who comes to the Tiki Bar the same first question. You didn't know you wanted to be in RevOps when you were a little kid. What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I had no idea. I majored in engineering, so clearly something to do with math and science. And now I'm at a 3D printing additive manufacturing company. So I guess things come full circle. I work with a lot of engineers, but yeah, I had no idea. Just kind of fell into it. And I ask a lot of RevOps people, and they kind of say the same thing.
Yeah, nobody intends for that. If I went back and asked your elementary school teachers if you were a fit for RevOps, would they have said yes? She's into math. Was that stuff all foreshadowed even at that point in life?
I feel like in elementary school, all of my reports always said she talks a lot. I guess that's a good thing. Like, I still have to talk a lot in my role. But yeah, I think so. I mean, I was always like more inclined to math. And yeah, so definitely that was my route.
What was the first job you ever had? Do you have any odd jobs as like a kid or high school, college, something like that?
Yeah, I was actually a barista in high school. I kind of loved it. It was an amazing job, an amazing first job. But I think it's always really interesting to like work when you're in school, right? Like I think it sets a good foundation for like understanding the value of a dollar and like making sure that you understand what hard work is. So I was really happy to like have a job in school. And yeah, I think it was like a really awesome job. It was like all my people that I worked with were all like my high school peers. So it was like really nice to just work with them and yeah.
Did you have any like apprehension about the actual like because you're dealing with customers, you're producing like coffee. People can be particular about what they want. They want it now, or was that like more of a natural fit for you?
I think what's really interesting about working in a coffee shop that people don't understand is like you have to memorize all these combinations of drinks. So like there's a lot of memory involved in that. And like there is a matter of like speed and efficiency also, right? You need to get through all these orders in a timely fashion. And so what I think about like those skills are really important, I think, like to translate to anything that you're doing in, your work life in adulthood, but especially like in RevOps, right? Like RevOps is all about like making sure things are working efficiently. And so like that was kind of like always something that was really important to me. And then memory too, like obviously having good memory is like important for anything in life, but no, that set a really good foundation for I don't know, like future jobs, I guess.
Can you still be counted on to make excellent coffee beverages for your friends and family?
Yeah, for sure. But I was always like the person who was like experimenting with the different flavors. So like I was doing banana lattes before anyone did banana lattes. So it's like stuff like that where it's like I was always doing like banana coconut, like whatever. So yeah.
I like that. You'd be good to have around for that. Okay. So then you eventually go to George Washington University. How did you end up there? What was the decision making process for you like at that stage of life?
I think it was more so like I wanted to be in a big city. So I was really between like George Washington and NYU. And so I really liked GW because it was still in a city, but you had a campus and there was a sense of community and I thought it was going to be cool to be like in DC. So that was kind of my decision process. I didn't really think beyond that, if I'm going to be honest, but it was just more so like, hey, I want to go somewhere to like get out there.
And did you have any, like you mentioned you're into math and science, but like when you're walking in as a freshman, did you have any view for what your career is going to look like afterwards?
Absolutely not. Like, had no idea, like, was just like focused on, you know, okay, like I'm here, let me figure out what classes I like. I really wanted to experiment with different things and kind of fell into engineering because it was like, more math and science focused. And I liked that it had a strict curriculum. Like, there wasn't much like wiggle room in terms of like all the classes you could choose. And I liked that structure, but it was never I honestly didn't decide on it. Like, my first year, I was like undecided. And so I actually had to catch up to actually be on the engineering path.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you say biomedical engineering, right? Like not the easiest of engineering paths. Like what intrigued you most about that particular field?
I think it was out of all of the engineering that the school offered, I think it was the closest to what I was interested in the time. I definitely liked like math and science. And then I had a friend of mine who was actually in that program, and I saw all of the classes that she was taking and they were all really interesting. So that's kind of how I fell into it. But it wasn't like I did a lot of research on it. I just kind of like fell into it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so you go through college. You're obviously kind of a high achiever going through the biomedical engineering track. It looks like you studied abroad, and then the party's over and it's time to get a real job. So, can you take me through like what it looked like for you leaving college and getting your foot in the door into the real world?
Yeah, so a lot of my friends like kind of went into consulting and things like that, and then a lot of them like immediately pursued like master's degrees. I knew that I didn't want to do either of those things, but in the back of my mind, I always kind of had this like inclination that I wanted to be in tech, and my dad is actually in tech, so I kind of got a little bit of experience into like how that world looks like. But basically, as soon as I graduated, I started working at a hospital in their biomedical engineering department, and we started using this like tool. And I was really fixated on like this like tool, and I really wanted to make sure that it was like kept up to date and everything was clean and all the records were like, all deduped and things like that, which is like kind of falling into this world of like database management, right? And so like I was so much more interested in that than like what was actually going on in the hospital. So I knew that I kind of needed to make a pivot. So I started working at this like small little startup in Massachusetts where I'm from. And that startup actually started using Salesforce. And so I became super invested in Salesforce. I became really good at like configuring it. And I was basically like managing it for the whole company. And then from there, I kind of knew like, okay, this is just a stepping stone. I need to like make bigger moves.
What was it about? You mentioned you're at the hospital and you kind of see this tech and you wanted it to be clean. You said you wanted it to like be done correctly. What do you think drives that within you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like honestly, this software wasn't great, by the way. It's called like TMS or something, and it's basically like the like asset management software for them to manage all the medical devices in the hospital. And like
Okay.
it's crazy because like things would be like misspelled, like things would be like all wrong. And I was just like, how would you find anything in here? How would you make reports? How can you do future planning? How can you like assess anything with this software when all the data is wrong, right? And so like I think it was just like a natural like inclination for me to want it to be better, and like more efficient, to be honest, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so then you get into Salesforce and you mentioned that something kind of clicks where you're like, okay, I need to be like a little more intentional about like what comes next. What do you start doing at that point to kind of like develop that muscle? Are you leaning more into Salesforce? Are you thinking about a career that like leverages this particular skill set? What comes next?
Yeah, so honestly, it was all really organic. Like we would need we would be like, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this without clicking these buttons?" Right? Like it was just like that, and then I would be like, "Oh, I think that's possible in Salesforce." Then I like went researched it and then like went and built it and like slowly just became more and more familiar with Salesforce, and back then it was classic. So like it was really old school and like just it's like an organic natural way of just like learning it, right? But I had no formal training at all in Salesforce, so this was like me just picking it up and learning it.
And did you like doing that? Like clearly you were good at it. Is there a moment where you're like, I'm pretty good at this and I kind of want to keep doing this? Is it where you made a decision that it would become a career?
Yeah, I think so. Like I found myself being like really interested in Salesforce and how it works and how it can be better. And I didn't realize that like by doing that, I could literally make a whole career out
Yeah.
of just that one thing. But like the RevOps part of it came after. Like I started by just like being interested in like working with Salesforce. So that kind of was like a little backwards there.
So then what was your evolution? Like what does it feel like to realize, okay, I'm really good at administering this system. now I need to like come into operations. How did that transition feel for you?
Well, I knew two things. I knew that one, I needed to move to New York. And then two, I knew that I needed to work at, one of these like fast growing startups, right? So what I would do is I would just like look up like fast, there's all these lists of like fastest growing startups in New York City, best company culture, like all of that stuff. And I would just look for positions that involve Salesforce. So whether it's like sales operations, Salesforce administrator, whatever it was, every like day I would make it my mission to just like look through and apply to those jobs. And then eventually one company kind of called me back. Like I wasn't getting a lot of callbacks because like didn't have my Salesforce admin license. Like I was just like kind of an amateur, right? And so like these companies were like, okay, like that's great. You love Salesforce and you've used it at one job, but like this is your first job. Like, so I wasn't getting a lot of callbacks, but then like this one company and my very first, boss in New York, who I'm still really good friends with today, he, interviewed me and he was like, listen, this is going to be a lot of work, but if you work hard, I promise it's going to be worth it. So I accepted the offer and then just moved to New York.
That's awesome. All right, so you get into this role and then you start doing some operations work. Was the operations work different than what you expected it to be? I'm curious how like reality versus expectations set in once you have to start understanding that part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, he taught me everything about RevOps, right? So like I didn't know anything. Like I literally just knew how to use Salesforce and I honestly thought I was really great at Salesforce. And then I got to this job and I was like, oh, wait, I don't know anything. So, yeah, he taught me like the fundamentals of like RevOps, like all of the different functions, all of the different hats that you wear, right? And he got me experience in every single thing. And so I learned by being part of this, like we were a 3-person team. So it was really nice. And he taught me all the fundamentals. So I worked at that company for, a little bit of time to the point where I kind of quickly understood all the concepts.
When you say that you maybe knew a little less than you thought you knew, it sounds like there might be a story behind that. Is there a moment you remember where you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of like moving to the big leagues here?
Yeah, yeah. Like I was like at my previous company, like I was the expert on Salesforce, but then I'm like now entering this team and I'm like one of three and like both the other people are like Salesforce admins and they've been doing this for a really long time and they're also both in RevOps, so they understand RevOps too really well. And there's just like so much more beyond just Salesforce, right? There's like other tools that most people have in their tech stack. And so I wasn't aware of like any of this. Like this was all brand new to me. So honestly, I just took it as like a learning experience, right? Like it was really awesome. I think also to be part of a company where like the energy is just like very high and you're like growing quickly and you're in New York, everything is fast paced. It was just like a great experience.
That's awesome. Did you have a favorite like other area of operations that you get into? Because the world of operations is kind of all consuming when you look at like RevOps today. Once you get out of the Salesforce world, did you have a favorite part that felt like a most natural fit?
Yeah, like I was really interested in forecasting and like forecasting accuracy. And so, like, that was always a big topic, and that always is still a big topic, right? And so I just was really, I guess, interested in how people knew that a deal was going to come through and how to accurately predict what you're going to close at the end of the quarter. That was really fascinating to me.
Now, when you're running Salesforce as an admin, you're probably dealing like a little bit less with salespeople. But as you grow in your career, you go on to be head of sales operations, now director of sales operations. How has your relationship evolved with those that are actually, running sales teams, individual salespeople themselves? How do you see that trajectory of your growth?
I mean, the truth is like if you're in RevOps, like you're gonna be working one to one with sales reps and sales leaders all the time. I don't think that ever goes away. And I think that honestly, the best RevOps people are the ones who can work really well with people in sales and like listen to them and listen to their feedback and kind of be able to toe that line between like, okay, taking in the feedback that's valuable, but also, saying like, okay, this is not something that's going to happen, or like, we can't just get rid of Salesforce or get rid of data entry altogether, right? So I think it's like finding that balance, but I think you have to talk to salespeople like all the time. Like I can't imagine a world where you're like in RevOps and you're not talking to salespeople.
Yeah, no, they'd find you. All right, so you have a career in New York City. You wanted to move there. That was like a personal goal. It sounds like you're moving up the ranks of different organizations, fast growing tech companies. What makes you then want to move across the country to Los Angeles?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the company that I work for currently, they are headquartered in San Francisco. And I built most of my career in New York tech, and I loved it. And I loved the opportunities that I got in New York tech. But it is like a little different than San Francisco tech. And the reason I say that is because I think that there is just a lot of innovation that comes out of the San Francisco Bay Area. And so when this company fell on my lap, like it literally, I worked with a, third party RevOps like placement firm, and I was always in contact with them, and they brought this opportunity to me, and they were like, this really cool company, is hiring for their first RevOps person. And I'd never even considered like the West Coast. I never even thought of the Bay at all. And so when they told me the company and, the technology and all of that, like I was honestly blown away. And so I thought they were like, listen, you can work in New York, you can work remote. And so I was like, let me just give it a try, right? And so I worked remote for them in New York for probably about like 2 years. And then I decided it's just so much easier to be on the West Coast. And, it kind of also brings me a step closer to, being more part of the team. And so, yeah, I made that move, and, it was a really crazy decision, but I think it was worth it.
That's awesome. You get a little weather improvement as well. I moved from Boston to Austin, Texas at one point in life, and I was like, oh, this is nice. No winter.
Wow. Okay. My parents actually did that exact move.
All right. Well, I must have missed them on the road, but yeah, did the same thing.
Yeah. They love it.
All right. Now, I'm going to invite you to look back a little bit now. If you had someone, they're coming out of college and they're trying to kind of figure it out, maybe they're intrigued by tech in the same way you were, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out, whether it be in RevOps or just in an entry level role in that world in general?
Yeah. So I think like this is going to be somewhat controversial, but I feel like we like to keep it we like to stir the pot a little bit, right? So, listen, there's a lot of remote roles out there. And I think it's easy when you're out of college now to just get sucked into one of these remote roles, be in your, live in the state that you live in your little bubble. And that's great. But like, I think if you want to make big moves, you have to take big risks. And I do think like San Francisco and New York are two of the biggest tech hubs in our country. And Austin is quickly catching up to be probably number three, right? And so I do think like if you're not living in those hubs, it's probably best to just make a move to get into those environments. Because the other part about that is like when you're young and you're in these, hubs where there's a lot of people who are in tech, you meet a lot of other people and you go to networking events and you get connected to people who are doing really cool things. And like, you just never know what's going to, fall on your lap through that way. And so I think you grow really quickly, like in your career, your personal growth, everything. And so I think, making a big move like that is, in my opinion, essential if you just want to like skyrocket your career. That would be like first and foremost what I would say.
Makes sense. And now your second stir the pot, I remember this from having dinner with you, is that you're a Salesforce defender, right? If you look online at LinkedIn or whatever, and you kind of see most people are kind of bashing Salesforce, an easy target. Meanwhile, they're like incredibly successful and do amazing things. So I'm not doing that here, but often that's what we hear when we're out in the world. And when we were at this dinner, you were kind of saying like, I don't get it. Like, these people are not understanding what the tool can do. So what do you think people kind of misunderstand or misrepresent when they're offering those types of kind of cheap critiques?
Yeah, I think like people love to kind of hate on Salesforce, right? Because they are just like the big dog in the space. Like they've owned the space for a really long time. I think salespeople always look to quickly bash Salesforce because they just don't want to do data entry and things like that. But the truth is when you work with like tons of different software, like Salesforce is probably one of the best. You can customize it to anything that you need, and it's always adapting. And so, like, you know, if you want to just like sit in an AI, tool or whatever, like, and you just want that to connect to Salesforce, and you just want to sit there and, you know, do things in that tool, it can do that. It can connect to other tools, like, it can connect to pretty much everything. And so, I think if your end goal is to just have like a fully automated end to end system of any capacity, right? Like, I think Salesforce has to be in the mix. And so, do I think, like, listen, is there room for like another tool? Is there room for like better tools out there? Of course. Have I seen anything that's better? Probably not. But that's just like my opinion. But it's definitely debate. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of RevOps people would never defend anything except Salesforce. But like, here and there, you get different opinions on that, I think.
As you think about the future of your own career outside of AI, what is something that you're actively trying to get better at or you're pursuing right now from a developmental standpoint?
I think one of the things that I always try to do, but I have been trying to do a lot more, is like just get more feedback. I think like early in my career, I hated getting feedback. I think I just viewed it as like critique and negative, comments and all of that. But like the more that I've just been in a working world, like I think feedback is like so good because I think when you proactively ask for feedback, you're not waiting until something happens where you have to course correct or, change the way you're doing something. Like, I think when it comes to like RevOps in particular, I always try to like ask for feedback in advance in terms of how I'm doing things. Like, I always ask for feedback in advance. And I think that that is just I think you have to be like mature in a mature state of mind to like proactively ask for feedback. But I think it's really good.
When you think about where RevOps is going, what is most exciting to you? What's on the horizon that you look at and you go like, okay, this is awesome. I'm in the right spot.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you were part of this conversation at your dinner, but the concept of headless CRM kept coming up. And so I think it's interesting. It kind of scares me, to be honest, but I do think that's where things are slightly going. I do think like Salesforce has introduced a lot of like AI features into their platform. I think that's great. I think there's a lot of things that like previously we'd have to use like data scrapers and things like that where like AI can just replace. I am really excited about how AI is going to change RevOps. Do I think there's still a lot of manual things that RevOps people are going to have to do? Yeah. But I think that's like part of our job, right?
Well, I tend to agree with that one. Headless is the most exciting area of my product that I'm most excited about. So we introduced Claude and OpenAI integrations earlier this year. And my goal is for me, because I obviously use the product all the time, to be completely headless as kind of the first user to do that this year. Because I think if you think about it, like just nobody wants to log into BoogieBoard, right? If they will do it, the admins will need to do it because they need to see things until we can express proper UI in one of those tools. But I'm also a big fan of headless, so +1.
Yeah, I mean that's where things are going.
Okay, my final question is always a very selfish question. I ask everyone to close time in the Tiki Bar. What is one thing that you find yourself recommending to everyone in your network, your friends, your family outside of work? So people have given answers of podcasts, movies, yoga practices, meditations, travel destinations. What's something that you recommend to people?
Ooh, well, first of all, I am currently just really excited to explore California. There's so much to see here that I'm just like trying to figure out little trips like here and there. I recently went to this place called Big Sur, which I think a lot of people are aware of but have never been. And it was like one of the most beautiful places I've actually ever been in my entire life. So have to recommend that. Now, the hack to doing Big Sur is like, if you're not really a camper, I'm not. And if you don't want to do like one of those crazy expensive hotels, which you totally should because they're awesome. But like, if you want something in between, now this is going to blow up this is my secret that I'm revealing, but Alila, which is like a super exclusive resort, whatever, they have like a glamping option, which is like not very expensive at all. It's just the price of it, like a normal hotel. And it is like, it is truly glamping. Like it is, you're in the, woods and like you're in nature, but like you have like these nice bathrooms and all this stuff, and you're still in this resort. So I highly recommend going to Big Sur, doing this glamping option, and just like taking in all the nature.
See, I love this question because I'm going to do that and it's going to be awesome. And I always get to steal tidbits like that. Juhi, I could talk to you all day and ask you more questions, but I know you got to get back to work. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll keep in touch with you next time we are in LA, and we'll see you soon on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.